back for another segment of the Mac and Fish podcast. Once again, we have someone filling in. Corey Long is going to be filling in for McKinley Roll on the Mac and Fish podcast today. But we have a great guest, someone that's very knowledgeable about University of Miami football, and not only the football team, but the program and also recruiting. Chris Stock from Inside the U. How are you doing, Chris?
Good, Charles. What's going on?
Not much. You know, these days used to be a lot crazier. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is a few years back, me and Corey Long decided to tag team together to cover recruiting. And we made a little trip down to South Plantation High School, and we weren't let in. And that day, Alex Collins wanted to commit to University of Miami, or his mom did. And the next thing we know is we weren't allowed in the school, and the mom had gone running off with his letter of intent. And me and Corey didn't know what the heck to do. I think we waited outside the school for 2 hours. You remember that, Corey?
Oh, yeah. Alex Collins. Yeah, because I was, and I had to do a bunch of ESPN because I was trying to give, I was working at ESPN at the time. I had to give a bunch of updates, and we didn't really know. We didn't know exactly what had happened. So we're just going by rumors. And the rumor was that either his mom had took the letter of intent and left the school, or took it and hid in a broom closet, or did something. And I just remember I had to do ESPN updates. I did Arkansas radio that night because I was talking to Charlie Partridge, and I was kind of passing along his words and a bunch of other stuff. It did get me on SportsCenter the next day. It was the only SportsCenter hit I ever did, so that I'll always appreciate it. Arkansas found his dad somewhere. That might be the greatest mystery to how they found Alex Collins' father.
It may not have been his biological dad, but the Arkansas found somebody that resembled him, hey,
somebody that was going to claim that Alex Collins was his son.
Well, Chris, we'll get into it, but how far have we come from those dreadful days of, Miami, the Alex Collinses and the Matthew Thomases. And today, Miami signed a great class. At the end of the day, Miami went 8-2 this year. And, University of Miami fans are a little upset with the way that it finished. But me and Corey talked about this the other day. Manny's done a great job of building it to where it is right now. And this year, I personally think it's one of the best classes they've signed in a very long time. And when you add somebody like Leonard Taylor and James Williams and these guys that are impact players, the trajectory of your program is going in the right way. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Charles, and great story, Corey. And certainly there's been a ton of stories over the years, and just covering signing day. I mean, I remember, we'd really just sit around UM and wait till faxes came in, before Twitter and release it. I mean, everyone's got these crazy stories, and I'm sure that was a good one with Collins. I certainly remember that one. But yeah, I think let's start right at the top with Miami's class, because honestly, I think that's where classes are judged, right? I mean, it's those top of the line, those elite players that can make a difference. And I don't think there's anybody, there's nobody that will say anything that, bad or against these guys, with Leonard Taylor at defensive tackle and James Williams at safety. And if you're starting a class there, that's going to be a great start. And when you saw what happened in that North Carolina game, the fact that you see these two guys can plug in there, because defense was clearly an issue, and it has been, and we could get into that if you want, but we'll stick with recruiting. But the impact that both of those guys can make, you're certainly looking for big things. And James had a really good senior year, Leonard as well. And just essentially every time they step foot on the field, they dominate. And that's what you want from big time players.
Yeah. It's the one position, it just seems crazy. Miami, we'll talk about another position they've struggled the last couple of years, but one position they haven't hit on is that defensive tackle position. And they did get Nesta, who was a highly rated kid, but they haven't signed a kid like Jason, the Taylor kid, in a long time. He's just so good. And you saw it in every, I went to 2 or 3 Palmetto games this year. You rarely see a D lineman dominate to the point that he shuts down the other teams. I mean, in the game against Osceola, I believe he had tackle for loss, sack, tackle for loss on consecutive 3 plays, and they had to punt. What makes him such a special player?
Well, the fact that you just mentioned, he's always across the line of scrimmage, and that's what Manny Diaz talked about when he mentioned Taylor's attributes. And the thing that stands out to me about Taylor is, this is a guy that all of the coaches staffs that he played for in high school, and he went to 3 high schools, started at South Dade, Southridge, and then his last 2 years at Palmetto, every coaching staff raved about him, regardless of his age and what he was doing. I mean, everybody really liked him. So you knew this was coming early on if you followed his career since the beginning. And he's just a guy that mixes, he's got just a great balance of mixing his strength with athleticism. He's really always going across the line of scrimmage, and he's finishing plays. And I think that's great to see from a defensive tackle. You talk about maybe other guys in this area that have done well. Miami did well. They got RJ McIntosh to be a very productive player. He was not a highly regarded guy, nothing like Taylor was. Gerald Willis was a highly regarded guy, but he transferred from Florida. So those are a couple guys. And, Marcus Forston was a highly rated guy. You're talking, over 10 years ago that Miami's landed a really highly regarded guy, other than you mentioned Silvera there. But certainly Leonard checks all the boxes and does everything you want from that position. And the thing is, and what we've seen too with Taylor, even though he was highly regarded as a young player, he has still progressed each and every year. I expect that to continue when he gets to Miami.
Yeah. The one thing I look at when I evaluate classes, I kind of try to put them in groups of 2, last year's and this year's. So you kind of get an idea of, how a school's recruiting. And, I looked over both of the classes and they've done a very good job. Now you add grad transfers. They got De'Aaron King. They got the Tyler Van Dyke guy. They continue to add the pieces at running back. They've had 2 or 3 good running back, 2 running back classes in a row that are good. The only part of their class, and it's just crazy that they haven't done exceptional at, is that cornerback spot. Do you think it's just one of those things that they just happen to miss on them at that area, and it's just an anomaly that they'll figure out eventually? Or like, why they've done so well at every other position these last 2 years? Why has the cornerback position been such a enigma for them?
Yeah, it's really hard to figure out, right? I mean, like you said, they touch on certain things. And one of the things Manny Diaz said when he was talking about this class, and certainly very excited, but he did say, there is work to do. He does know where they're at, where they need to get to, that kind of a thing. So I think certainly with that position, they definitely need to improve on it. I don't think there's any question about it. And it is a little frustrating when you know what's coming in terms of the spots that will be available, and then not being able to fill the holes as you see them, pop up. So I think that's the biggest concern, and wondering why it quite hasn't worked. There's been a lot of reasons, and we'll see how that works moving forward.
All right. I look at, I guess one of my biggest curiosities in Miami's class, which, on the top end, I think has done a very good job. Where do you guys see James Williams playing? I had him, in Walter football, I had him listed either number 1 or number 2 outside linebacker in the country. Now he's a safety, right? He plays safety now, doesn't he? At American Heritage, right?
Correct.
Okay, but he's a big safety. He's about 6'4", over 200 pounds. Do you see him growing into being an edge rusher, an outside linebacker, or do you think he's just going to be a big Sean Taylor-like safety?
I think James Williams can play whatever position you want him to play at, quite frankly. If you talk about, can he play safety, it's almost like, what are we talking about here? Can he be, the comparisons to Sean and all that, but let's just look at what Miami has right now. Yeah. Amari Carter is starting at safety. Is he going to be a better safety than that? I would like to think so. So if you want to move him around at linebacker, do you see that being a fit? Obviously, it's a hole right now with Miami needing linebackers. The thing that stands out to me, and just talking about James, I have his film on the YouTube channel about breaking it down. He had 3 monster plays this year, a pick 6 from the 100 yards out, blocking a kick and returning it all the way. So you see the speed. He ripped off a fumble. So the big thing that stands out to me in watching this film, he's playing that one high safety look, but he's also moving into the box and then backing off. And I think that was good to see his range. But when you watch his speed, and I know that's an attribute, that's something that's been talked about with James, but when you see him really stride out and run, it's very impressive for a guy his size. And the thing that stands out to me about what position, Corey, about where to play him and things like that, it reminds me of Ray Armstrong
Yeah.
because it was, he was another 6'4" safety, really talented player coming out of high school there. And I remember talking to Randy, and he played safety all the way through Miami, plays linebacker in the NFL a little bit there. And I remember talking to Randy Shannon after Ray Ray had left. We had a conversation about Ray Ray, and he said he always wanted him to be a linebacker, but it wasn't something that Ray Ray wanted to do. So in terms of moving James to linebacker or Miami's striker position, if you want to like move him around different ways, it's got to be on James and what he wants to do. But to answer your question, simply put, can he play safety? I absolutely think he can, because I think he's got enough range. I think he can make tackles, and I think he could do what Miami asks of their safeties.
Chris, games are won and lost in the trenches, and a lot of times fans, they want the skill guys in the recruiting class. They're the glam positions, but as well as I do, the reason Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, these teams keep winning year in and year out is the O line and D line recruiting. What are your thoughts at those two positions as far as moving forward, where Miami's at?
I think if we just start with the offensive line, the big thing about that is they're going to return experience. And we always talk about, when you look at teams that do well with their offensive line, it kind of starts with that, right? You get guys in, if they played a lot, they have a chance to improve as a group. So I think if you're looking at Miami improving in that area, and once again, maybe it's not those NFL draft pick guys and all that stuff, but you do like the experience. They do like guys moving forward. They got Jalen Rivers, highly regarded guy last year. Isaiah Walker, in effect, didn't do much this year. Obviously, didn't play, but just guys in the bank, so to speak, of moving forward. And and they got a few guys in this class, and we'll see how they develop. I think the biggest thing that Miami's doing right now is they're really racking up quantity with their offensive line, and then we'll see how they develop. But once again, they have guys that have experience. You just want them to get better. Zion Nelson, you feel like, okay, year 3, he's played a lot. Like, will he continue to make that improvement? It felt like this year, the way the coaches talked about him, he really did make that improvement. So I think that's what you want to see in all the linemen. As far as the defensive linemen, yeah, we talks about Leonard Taylor, and you're still looking for those other guys. They like what they have in Jared Harrison Hunt, a redshirt freshman who played well this year. Another year you're looking for him to do well. So, and then the defensive ends, will they be able to get Jafari Harvey at the level of a Quincy Roche or Jalen Phillips? That remains to be seen. They were playing at such a high level this year. So we'll see how that development goes.
Hey, Chris, I'm interested. I'm looking at their receiver group that's coming in. They went a little heavy on wide receivers. I think that's a position it's safe to say they've been a little underwhelming at over the last couple of years. Who in this group coming in just really kind of catches your eye that you're excited about?
Corey, I think all three of them are similar, right? Or similar in terms of their where they are as prospects. All three of them are different. And Jacoby George, Romello Brenson, and Brashard Smith, all three bring something different to the table. But I think with where they're at, you really see upside with all three of them and being impact players. And I actually asked Manny Diaz about the competition moving forward, because Miami signed 4 wide receivers last year. They're set to return their top guys, another, a slate of 4 guys ahead of them on the upperclassmen. So you do have a lot of competition. I think the big thing that stands out to me, whether they signed them last year, this year, the older guys, I think what's standing out in terms of the high level guys, you're not seeing that 6'3", 6'4", 220 pounder. They barely have a receiver on their roster right now over 200 pounds. The 3 coming in aren't those big receivers that you're looking for either. But they want to utilize that speed. Brinson has it. He can beat anybody deep. Brashard Smith can do it out of the slot, move him around. And certainly with Jacoby George, you really like his bounce, his athletic ability as well. So I think the big thing is just you like the base that they're at as prospects. You just want to see him move forward. It'll be very interesting to see, what it's going to take for the younger receivers, whether it's a freshman or second year player next year, just to elevate on the depth chart because of the competition.
Yep. Chris, one of the big questions that's going to come out of this season is D'Eriq King going to come back? Now, one of the sources I spoke to told me he feels pretty confident that it could happen. I mean, a lot could change. What are your feelings on him coming back, and like how much of an impact can that have on next season?
Well, it's a huge impact. Let's just start there. Like, it's a huge impact if he comes back. College football, you see it all around the country. It doesn't matter what conference you're in, what part of the country. If you have that quarterback that can make plays, you're a much different team. De'Aaron provides that. And also, year two in the offense, you got to figure he's going to be even better than he is this year. Thing that stands out to me, though, whether it's D'Eriq King, and he could certainly come back, and I know he's got a lot to decide with where he'll fit in with the NFL and whatnot, but I just think around college football, I guess I'm just kind of expecting seniors to all leave, just because they're allowed to come back. I guess I just kind of assume they're going to move on with their careers, whether they're high picks or not. And I think D'Eriq, I guess I would just assume he's going to move on. I think it'd be a huge surprise and a huge gift of benefit to Miami if he does return. And I just think it has to do with, guys this D'Eriq, he's already been in college 5 years. So he's already, you're asking a lot. His teammate, for example, Jared Williams, he was in his 5th year at Miami this year. And offensive line coach Garen Justice already said he expects him to leave. So I think a lot of that has to do with, once again, just kind of going through the college, taking classes, the whole repetitiveness of it. But we'll see. I'm very intrigued by what's going to go around the country because all these guys can come back with that extra year of eligibility.
I think King's going to return. I remember, we talked about this maybe 6 weeks ago. So I sent an email out to Charlie Campbell, who runs the draft projections for Walter Football for my website, and he honestly had said that King wasn't. NFL Advanced Scouts didn't have him on their preseason watch list as a draftable prospect, but he thinks he is. He just feels like taking advantage of the extra year would be smart. One, Miami has a chance to be very good next year. Maybe they can get into an ACC title game. You get that marquee match against Alabama early. You get that Clemson match late, maybe. And just having more tape of him playing in those big games, and whether he's leading the team to a victory or competing and putting them in a situation to win, is going to help his draft stock. This is a deep year for quarterbacks. It's not the best year for him to come out. I don't think anybody would disagree there.
I think you're absolutely right, Corey. And I think that's that plays into Miami's hand, that's the benefit, right? And he's not that automatic, highly regarded quarterback. So that's why it's such an intriguing thing. And I think without question, I think what will be interesting is if he does return, do other guys decide to return as well? Other guys with decisions to make similar to his. And I think that will be interesting if you can get other guys to follow.
Well, Chris, if we were on TV, we'd make the audience wait. But we're going to go to the big subject of probably the most important player in Miami's class, and a big-time get for them is Jake Garcia, the quarterback that was originally out of California. He was committed to USC. Miami recruited him. You heard all year that they were going to land this kid. Now that they did, tell us a little bit about Jake and, like how big of, I think this is the biggest quarterback commit they've had since Kyle Wright. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I believe in Jake. I think that stands out to me as I broke down, I got all of his highlights from his, the first half of his senior year. If you guys don't know, Jake played, he transferred from California. He left California. He wanted to play his senior year out. He played one game at Valdosta High School, had some eligibility things and whatnot. Then he transfers to Grayson, steps right in and does well there. So through those first 5 games, I broke down the film. Things that stand out to me, first off, for a guy to do this for his senior year, Charles, you've been around a long time. Corey, you've paid attention to recruiting a really long time too. You just don't see this. And Jake didn't need to do this. He could have waited it out and rolled early in 3 or 4 months. He didn't have to play, stay there in California, but he wanted to play, and to do it in clear across the country. I think that says a lot about him. And he did well at both spots. He seems to fit in. So I think those things, if you're talking about intangibles, you have to give him credit for that. On the field, things that stand out to me, while he's not that really athletic runner that you've seen, he's not a D'Eriq King, for example. he does know how to slide in and out of the pocket. And when he does that, he's able to make throws downfield. Sometimes guys might panic and then look for a quick check down, and that might be great, 5, 6, 7 yards, but he's able to slide out of protection, feel the defense, and then he'll throw it 30, 40 yards. And I think that's a good sign for a young quarterback. I think you like what he has right now. You see a lot of upside with him. And certainly without question, Charles, that quarterback position being such a big point of emphasis. So if you get a guy like that in your program, a guy that you're expecting to really handle the reins and move it forward, it's definitely excited for Miami. And yeah, he's as good of a quarterback prospect as certainly as they've had since Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that impressed me, and I make a lot of my evaluations on, is when these guys go to camp. He went to UM's camp. He didn't have to compete. He didn't have to go out there and throw. He didn't have to do all the things the coaches asked to him, and he did them. And he continued to do them. He wanted to show that he was an elite level player and a quarterback, and he wasn't worried about making bad throws or looking bad. He went out there and competed, and that's something this day and age where so many of these kids get hyped, and you'll see them go to camp and they're in street clothes, and you're like, what the, like, why even show up? That's not this kid. He's a confident kid. You could see it in the way he walks, the way he throws the ball in his game. I don't know. I really like Jake, and I think Miami got a winner. And I think the problems they've had before they got D'Eriq King, it seems like they're starting to go away.
Yeah, I look at Jake. He's kind of the modern day pro style quarterback in the sense that you can't not have mobility and play quarterback. It's impossible. You're going to die. But he's not like he can scramble a little, like you said, like Chris said, he's great at sliding, sliding around, making throws down the field. He's kind of what more the modern day pro style quarterback is. And he reminds me a lot of the quarterbacks that Miami's won with. I see similarities to Steve Walsh. I see similarities to, Testaverde in some ways, maybe not as good of an athlete, but I see a little bit of the size there. He's Ken Dorsey with talent, I guess is what you'll say, with like arm talent. So the guy, he just reminds me a lot of the quarterbacks that Miami's had a chance to win with in their, during their glory years. He looks kind of like that guy. He carries himself more, like Charles said, much more confidently than I've seen from Miami quarterbacks over the past 10, 15 years outside of Tate Martell, who's very confident. But
just can't play.
Just can't play. But yeah, so I really I think this is a heck of a get. I mean, when you look at this, you look at the top of the class, you got Garcia, Williams, Taylor. There's not a lot to complain about there. You got some guys that are going to get their names called in 3 or 4 years, I think, by Roger Goodell. So some of them might even get that big hug from him. You never know, man.
Yeah. Well, Chris, we know you're a busy guy, and we appreciate you giving us a few minutes today. And, once again, anybody out there that follows University of Miami football, I recommend you follow Chris Dockett. He runs the Inside the U, and he gives great information. But Chris, tell the audience out there a little bit how they could follow you and your website.
Yeah, I mean, Charles, I appreciate it, and definitely thanks for having me on. And Corey, good talking to you as well. But yeah, it all starts at InsideTheU.com, a site that's been around. It's crazy how many years we've been doing this, but since 2007 now. But yeah, in all kinds of venues, right? You can follow me on Twitter at InsideTheU. The YouTube channel is really doing well, and it's also at Inside the U. So definitely do that. Facebook, plenty of updates there as well. So we're just trying to make sure we hit on all avenues and trying to do podcasts. And anytime you have me on, Charles, it's always a good time chatting. And certainly we could talk a long time about this, but it's very interesting. And just right from the beginning, when you guys talked about the old recruiting stories, man, there's so many of these that come around on signing day, and you start to think back on things. And like I said, I remember just sitting around UM, literally waiting for faxes to come in, or you would call the schools, the high schools, to say, hey, did he sign? Did it come in? Just information just wasn't as out there. So you had to really put in a lot of work. And just real quick before we get going, I remember right when we started Inside the U, it was in August, and that first year in 2007. So it was a big recruiting year. Miami had the #1 ranked class, Ja'Cory Harris and whatnot. So come signing day, we had an independent site and whatnot. And literally the night before signing day, our site crashed and they wanted to make sure that we had enough, memory and to handle all the traffic we are going to get. So literally like 5, 6, 7 in the morning, our site was still down. And we're trying to like make it as a site and really hoping this, we can't do anything without a website. And like, we're trying to make names for ourselves. And like, I remember I stayed up all night, monitoring it all and talking to customer service. It was such a mess, but we did it and it got up and running. And we don't have those issues anymore, but I still remember all that stuff, all the stuff that we've done, and certainly the state championship games this week and all the fun that we've had covering those games as well.
Yeah, I think first time I talked to you, Chris, I was sports editor at the Lakeland paper. It must have been about 04, 05 when you were at Scout, and I was
sure.
This big signing day thing, and we were kind of just playing it. We were just kind of flying. We're just kind of flying, but we figuring out what we're going to do as we did it. I'm like, why don't I just call some of these guys from these websites and see if they can break down their classes rather than us trying to do it. So I think that's the first time I talked to you. Must have maybe 04. It's a long time ago now.
Yeah, I started covering the team in 03. And yeah, for Scout, and actually before Scout it was called the Insiders. So I mean, it was just dating back a little bit here now.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I could ever remember, and Corey was with me a lot of times, is how emotionally and physically, I mean, it sounds crazy. It was emotionally and physically draining covering recruiting 10 years ago. I've learned how to like tone it down. I mean, it just trying to figure out like information. Is it real? Is it not? It's come so far. And now that you can rely on so many more people, it's made the job easier. But I got to tell you, I used to be wiped out for like 2 weeks after, it's crazy.
And my story time. All right. I don't know, Chris, if you've ever had the pleasure of being in the passenger seat in a Charles Fishbein, a driving production. I rented a car. I'm down there. This must have been 2011, 012, whenever Matthew Thomas committed at Booker T. Washington, because I was at ESPN, but I wasn't doing TV that day. That was the Alex Collins day. So we're leaving there, and Tim Brandt, I get a chance to do Tim Brandt radio while Fish is just driving about 30 miles above the speed limit in this little like white, like a Nissan Maxima through through Liberty City. I mean, just busting through stop signs just because we were racing to get somewhere else. I'm trying to talk to Tim on the radio at the same time and talk about how how Hugh Freeze had challenged anybody to prove that he was cheating in the class that brought out Kim Dichie and all those other guys.
Treadwell and
Treadwell and
Tunzel.
And Fish was about to kill us on the road. Oh, that was a day.
Yeah, you don't want to drive with me. I got a ticket. I got a ticket the other day. Not only did Palmetto lose, I got a ticket for running a stop sign. It's like I was really angry that night. So, but Chris, all good, man. Like I said, I don't want to keep you too long, but I'm sure we got a million stories to tell, and we look forward to having you back on.
All right. Thanks, Charles. Thanks, Corey. We'll talk to you guys later.
Chris.
Take it easy, man.